Nadav, being 36, you are young, and you have been now for 5 years in the Foreign Ministry of Israel. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and why you chose this path?
So I have to say I've always wanted to be a diplomat from a young age. I remember, like many Israelis, I traveled not in Mexico but South America with my big trip after the army. And my father called me while I was on a trip and he said, "Hey, you need to enlist to your studies." And I knew I wanted the end goal to be diplomacy, but I didn't know how to get there exactly. And like a good Jewish boy, I decided to study law. And then had a career in law. I did my first degree and I did a second degree in the U.S., which touched more international aspects of law. Worked in a private firm, worked in the NGO world, and then at the end joined the Foreign Service. So it took me about 10 years through some work in the legal world, and then finally I did what I thought about back then when I was traveling in South America, to be a diplomat for the State of Israel.
We have seen lately that Israel has made giant steps into diplomacy, because now they have relationship with even the Arab countries and the Gulf countries. Can you tell us how was this process?
I think first of all, Israel, its outlook is that we're really open to talk to everyone. We really want to make relationship with everyone, and sometimes I think about it that we look at it almost like startups, right? We need to be creative, we need to be innovative of how we make these relationships, how we maintain these relationships, and also how we operate. So if we see embassies who have hundreds of diplomats, we're usually small, like a startup, So if you look at our for instance, the embassies of that we have in Africa, which is where I came from before I came to Mexico, you see a big amount of embassies, not a lot of people in each embassy. Everyone working very hard to make these relationships, to promote these relationships, and in the instance, for example, in Africa, really following what our Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said is kind of our big return to Africa. Back in the day, Prime Minister Golda Meir started a connection with Africa, with many embassies around and many development programs, and now we're continuing that recently. Just renewed relations with Chad, for example, a Muslim country in Africa. Mm-hmm. So I think basically it's the way we look at almost the startup scene, and it's the way we look at diplomacy. We're open, and we are creative and innovative to get to that ends, to make these relationships, which at the end are strategic and have to do with Israel's national security.
Because these countries, Muslim countries,
right,
are now getting closer to Israel. Why are they doing this?
I think as the world becomes more interconnected, and people have varied interests. They have economic interests, they have developmental interests, and they have ecological interests, and in all these different areas which have nothing to do with politics, they view Israel as a partner. If we look at Israel's agenda now in the UN General Assembly, you see a lot of matters that have to do with gender issues, with people with handicap, mobility matters, with sustainable development. All these issues that other people have the same interest in and want to engage Israel to move forward in that area.
But it's a shame that the UN is still biased against Israel.
Yeah, and I think there's two ways to go around that. On the one hand, we don't tolerate that, and we call out the politicization of the UN bodies, especially some of the professional UN bodies, which have nothing to do with politics. And on the other hand, we show them our positive agenda. We show what Israel has to offer. in sustainable development, in gender issues, in matters of people with handicap. So it's in both ways we're moving forward to, and again, engaging the United Nations bodies. Okay, we call them out on what they're doing wrong or in politicizing issues, but then we show what Israel has to offer with a very positive agenda for all the world.
Wow. You just came from Nigeria. How was your experience there, and how different is it from Mexico?
So I'll start and say it's very different. I loved my work in Nigeria. I think that it's in Africa you can really, and it's a smaller embassy than here. So as a diplomat, you do almost everything. You're the deputy. You work on cultural matters. You work on economic matters because there's no separate economic attaché. You work on development matters. You work on everything together. And when the ambassador's not there, you're also the ambassador. So acting ambassador. So I think that's a really interesting experience, a personal experience of growth where you touch all the different areas. And what's interesting is to really get to know a country like Nigeria, which is a giant in Africa. And it has almost 200 million people, which means by 2050 they're surpassing the United States in population, and very influential. But again, as a diplomat, even with learning about Africa in the classroom, when you come, you don't realize that things are not as you see. Okay, so before you come to Nigeria, or whoever hears about Nigeria, it's a country in Africa, a big one, a big economy. But when you get there, you realize that there are more than 300 different ethnic groups, 300 languages, and to understand and to work efficiently as a diplomat, you have to really engage and understand the different areas, the different tribes, the different cultures. Half of them are Christian, half of them are Muslim, and so a lot of diversity, a lot of challenges. For me, it was really, really exciting. On a personal level, my wife worked in the United Nations while we were there with refugees, and so we had that experience. There's a big humanitarian crisis. There were more than 2.1 million internally displaced persons from Boko Haram, and so both me and my wife, and we had a young child while we were there. It was a very, very good experience.
Is there a Jewish community in Nigeria?
First of all, that's a very interesting question. There are communities which have taken upon Jewish cultures, and so they may not be Jewish by heritage or by genealogy, but there are big communities of African Nigerians who decided to take upon the Jewish kind of culture, and it's very interesting to see. I visited one of their places of worship, and it was it was pretty similar to a synagogue that you see here, and they had the Torah book and the scroll, and they did some of the procession of the prayer was similar. So it's interesting to see and very unexpected. It's not a place where you would think there's a Jewish community. And maybe by definition they are not Jewish, but you see that people around the world, even in Africa, find interest and are passionate about the Jewish faith.
And they support Israel, I guess.
Yeah. And so it's a good question. It's interesting where you get surprising vote of appreciation and support. So yeah, definitely.
You are political counselor of the embassy. What is your work all about? Where has it taken you? What people have you met so far? Because you only have been for 3 months.
Yes. So so if I compare it to Nigeria, where I kind of had very wide range of responsibilities, here it's more focused, which I appreciated. You can really get in depth into the different areas of the position. I have to mention that currently I'm also doing some cultural and public diplomacy issues, as our lovely diplomat who's in charge of that is on maternity leave. I'm excited to get a bit of culture, on the side, some film festivals that we're involved with, book fairs, performances of Israeli artists. So that's kind of exciting on the side for the first few months. And as far as political counselor, basically, as one of the political figures in the embassy, my main job is to promote the bilateral relationship between Israel and Mexico in different ways, and whether it is directly with my Mexican counterparts in the different branches of government, both on federal level and on the state level, whether it's through communities that are of historic and strategic importance to the embassy, the lovely and embracing Jewish community that is here, which is very special, as I mentioned before. Different communities in the Christian world. As far as very interesting to note that throughout Latin America, the evangelical movement is gaining traction and power, and so that's an interesting area where we're looking into, and so through those different areas, whether it's directly through government players or through different communities that are of strategic importance to us, we work and promote the relations between Israel and Mexico, and this is according, of course, to the guidelines that we have from our headquarters of how we see the relationship, the goals of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Latin America, how we see them throughout the world. What is the role of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in promoting Israel's national interests and national security interests? So it kind of trickles down from the top to Latin America to Mexico, and my job here at the embassy is to make sure that happens in different ways. Additionally, we work, and we want to work more with Mashav.
What's the program?
Mashav is the Israel's development and cooperation agency. Okay, so working with and I have experience working with Africa, but working with development projects, whether it be capacity building, whether it be bringing people to courses in Israel, bringing experts here. It can be in agriculture, it can be in water, but such areas, that's also under my responsibility. And we just had, we're not in charge only of Mexico here, we're in charge also of Belize and the Bahamas. And I think we had a project that really is a good example of my job. I just returned a few days ago from the Bahamas, and we led a team there to give humanitarian aid after Hurricane Dorian. And first of all, the first stage is to go and see, and you see that it was just horrific what the hurricane did, and many people just lost everything they had. And they have, whenever there's a humanitarian crisis, there's all kinds of challenges. And I think what Israel did good is, as a country that, we're not the US, we have limited resources in this regard, but we really tuned in to what the country needs. And what the country needed at the time is drinking water. For a month after the hurricane, all the waters in 2 islands were just salt water. You shower in salt water, everything's salt water, as I experienced. And Israel came with a solution that fit this very important need. We brought experts from Israel's water authority, and we had them teach the Bahama government, the National Emergency Agency of the Bahamas, how to deal with a water crisis. Okay, and we brought equipment, and we set up a whole system which is working now, of water distribution points, so people can get access in the areas where they most need to water, the most basic thing. And so it's amazing to see how even a small country like Israel can really make a difference. It's important also, first and foremost, to really have an effect and help the people who are in a crisis. And second, it's really important for us as we build our bilateral relationship with the Bahamas, for example. And so this is an example of how development work is in its own important to help people in need, and also afterwards and in the future is important to build a relationship between the two countries. So that's kind of a fresh example. I just came back there a few days ago of what I do in my job.
And you took saltwater shower?
Yes, I did.
How does it feel?
I mean, it's you feel something so basic, and what's interesting in the Bahamas is not like some places in Africa. It's a place with tourism, and there's hotels and everything, and people who usually some of the people on the islands live a very nice life, but then to come to this infrastructure which is good and have no water, not to brush your teeth and not is kind of shocking, and you see how much power nature has, and it doesn't matter. You see the good neighborhoods in Bahamas and the bad neighborhoods were all hit the same way, and everyone, even if the structures could withstand the wind of the hurricane, the water took everything, and everyone suffered from this hurricane. And so, I'm really proud of what we did there. It was actually a collaboration between Mashav, which I represented there, between Israel Water Authority, between Israel, which is an Israeli NGO which worked on ground and was our implementing partner, and working most importantly with the Bahamas government hand in hand, so that they learn this, and once we go, they can operate this system if this ever, God forbid, happens again. So it was really interesting, and we're still working on it. We're just in the process of sending one of Israel's best hydrologists to help them plan in the long run. So now we've for the next few weeks, we've brought a solution for the emergency situation to give water to the citizens, but we're also looking to help them in the long run of planning, of checking their aquifers, checking the levels of salt, checking what wells they can use now or not, and so so they don't do damage in the long run to the water system on these islands. So, really interesting. And back to what you said, whoever knew that this was what I would do as a diplomat, right? It's not, you don't get training for everything, and it's one of those experiences that's really meaningful, which makes you, proud to represent Israel.
And water is one of the issues that Mexico also has. And our friend, the new ambassador, is also committed to the program of our president, López Obrador, with all kinds of projects. What are your projects for Mexico?
No, so I think that you touched something very important. As far as development, and in Mexico it's a little different because it's not a humanitarian issue, it's not a crisis, but it's a long-term project. And here we have to go in two ways. We can use our development experience, but also tune in our vibrant and talented private sector. And so the way we look forward is tuning into the issues and challenges that Mexico has. Water is an example of them, and seeing where we can really, assist. And when we look at it, we look into the development program of the current government, and we are working as we speak in different areas to tune in to help, whether it's from our development experience through Mashav, which I mentioned, okay, and our experts which we can bring, or whether it's through our private sector that has different solutions that have been working in other parts of the world or in Israel to really make a difference. And I think that's our main purpose, and to really tune into the needs of Mexico, the Mexican people, the Mexican government, and really try to help and cooperate wherever we can and wherever we have comparative advantage. Water is a good example of that.
Have you already planned what to do next with Mexico? Definitely,
we're I think what we're doing now is we have different plans. Not to get into the details because they're very kind of new. But going to 2020, we're definitely gonna see what projects are most urgent and most important for the Mexican government, and also where we can really make a difference, like I gave the other example. And as we go to 2020, we're really going to start working concretely on these projects.
Because there will be also the renovation of the the trade treaty.
Right, and that's kind of one of the basic tools which we use, especially when we talk about the private sector involvement and making it easy, which is in many countries and also in Mexico, maybe the most important tool to make a difference. Also because it's sustainable, government, and as an Israeli government, we can help with one project, we can help with advisors, but in order for it to be sustainable and to really work in the long run, at some point we like to have our private sector be involved and the Mexican private sector in collaboration.
Have you already met people from Mexico, political?
Yeah, definitely. I think at the beginning of every we call it every new mission, every diplomatic employment, there's a time where you're just like getting to know people, getting to know people in government, getting to know fellow diplomats. So definitely, I've been really trying to go around and meet people, and this is kind of the time at the beginning of every mission to make those relationships. And fortunately, my predecessor did a great job in also informing and introducing me to people in different branches, whether it's Ministry of Foreign Affairs or different agencies or different embassies or Jewish community or Christian communities. So it's a lot, and but it's very important. So it goes back to what we said about what the job as a diplomat. The job of a diplomat is to make these relationships and to through these relationships enhance collaboration.
And we heard that there were groups, Israeli groups of young people that came to Mexico to assist in schools and institutions. Can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, so that's actually a lovely example of people who are not trained to be diplomats, but are in essence diplomats. Two groups recently came. One of them is called the Israelis, which tapped into young people who finished the Israeli military and come to, as I said I did back in the day, come to backpack with their big mochilot and back around the continent, around Central America and South America, and really give them a training course of how to represent Israel while they're doing so, because these people are already traveling and they're interacting with local communities in Latin America, and they're interacting with other travelers from different countries. And so this organization tapped in to this population, gives them some training, and they go around and they do different projects to help the local communities, and they interact in positive interactions with both local and international crowd. And so for me, it's lovely to see how these young people, without even knowing it, are just diplomats for Israel. They did one project in Chiapas recently, a community service project, and then I'm sure they're going to do more. And this is an example where the embassy really tries to support them and give them a hug and help and help them with everything.
What did they do in Chiapas?
They worked in, what they did is they renovated a school there, and they worked with the local community to see what the needs are, and just helped. And this they did together, not only the Israelis but also with other travelers that were there. So it's really a lovely project, which I'm sure we'll see more of. And the other project also is in Hebrew. The organization is called Lochamim Lelo Gvulot, which is an organization also of people who finished the army pretty recently in Israel and come to do different community projects in around the world. In Mexico, they've done it a few years. They work with the local government of Miguel Hidalgo, and they worked in a few schools, particularly one school which me and the ambassador visited for their ending ceremony. Was just lovely to see. They worked both on physically renovating the school and teaching the students skills as far as computer and other skills that are important for these students in primary school. And it was lovely. These kids were just crying to see these young Israelis leave them after a few weeks. And again, these people are all young diplomats, so it's lovely to see, going from as a professional diplomat who chose this as a career, to see these young people who are passionate and also to do good, and also to represent Israel in that way.
What have you thought about like something creative to do here?
Look, I think you'll see it. You're coming at a interesting time. During this time in the embassy, we usually sit together and plan for 2020. So I'll
for 2020.
Yeah, for the next year. So I'll keep you a bit in suspense, but we're at this point, having discussions in the embassy of all the different activities that we'll have for 2020. I can promise you it will be, vibrant both in cultural and public diplomacy areas. We're gonna, we've as a small country, we've touched many areas, and we'll continue, as far as, whether it be the arts or film or literature. So we'll continue doing that full force. We'll continue reaching new populations that I said before that are strategic important to us, and populations maybe that haven't been reached before. And we'll do our best as a team to take the relationship to even the next level.
And we spoke about an experience you had with Mexico, with the Mexican culture and the Mexican gastronomy here in Mexico.
So So I was telling you that we kind of going back to what a small world this is. So I did my second degree in law in the U.S. and made some good friends there. Some Mexican lawyers. They never thought that about 7 years later I would land from nowhere in Mexico. We were much younger then. No one had children, and so it was lovely to come and see these. Recently, this past weekend, I went with two of these couples who I met as lawyers, and they hosted me in their family house in Puebla. First of all, I can't stop with the compliments of what a wonderful region it is, and how wonderful it was to see and get to know the area, the cuisine. They made me eat every kind of a Pueblano cuisine. They had a bit empathy and didn't give me the spiciest, I think. Yeah, but I think this is because of the beginning, and they'll probably work their way up with me until I have the spice level of a Mexican. No, but really, it was lovely to see how how you make these relationships. Some are unconnected. You come here to Mexico, and they hosted me in their traditional family house, showed me around Puebla, which was lovely, had me taste all the traditional foods which originated from Puebla. And
is there any food you like better?
I think I've actually this weekend tasted so many new foods. I was telling them that I still have to do the rating of which I like most, but it was altogether a great culinary experience. Very different from the Mexican food you taste in the U.S. Yes. Right? But it was lovely, and so I'm excited about that, and I think it's important also on a personal level and also a professional level to explore as much as I can throughout the country. Mexico City is lovely, but also to explore.
And have you had contact with the Jewish community? Definitely.
I think this is maybe the most special Jewish community I've met, and I've
yes, why?
I think I've interacted with different Jewish communities around the world. I've spent a lot of times in the United States, interacted with communities in Europe and otherwise also in Latin America. But I think here, first of all, accepting all the new team here with such warmth, warmth and really a yearning for true collaboration. Obviously the embassy is a very natural partner with the Jewish community here. So I've seen this from the beginning, and I think the uniqueness is just, it's really nice to see how people work together. So obviously, you put a few Jewish people in a room, there'll be many more opinions, as the saying goes, but people find a way here to work together and to promote the important interests of the Jewish community with the government, with other communities in Mexico, and I think that's very impressive, and you don't see that in many other places in the world. So I'm looking forward to continue working with them.
Thank you.
Sure.
Do you have any message for the Jewish community?
Definitely, I think I'm very, very excited to be here in Mexico. Very excited to work, get to know the many vibrant activities that the Jewish community does here, and just emphasize that the embassy has its doors open, and any organization who is looking to collaborate, to get the support of the embassy is really more than welcome. So basically, yeah, looking forward.